So in general, what's your sheet have on it?
I've got, well, really what I did is, coaching athletes of all different ages, starting out as a middle school coach and now a high school coach, trying to figure out just what was appropriate volume for kids of different ages.
Mm-hmm.
And coming from a background of everything being in mileage. High school, my coach used mileage. In college, my coach, all the workouts he wrote for us were all in miles. And that's the same thing I did. My first few years of coaching, I did the same thing. And in middle school, it didn't really seem to be that big a deal. But in high school, it got real complicated just because of the diversity in backgrounds. You'll have a high school junior who may be running for the first time, and then you might have a high school freshman who's been running since they were 7. So you've got people of just all different ages and abilities. And it was getting really hard to do workouts in miles, like trying to tell some kids go do 6 and some kids go do 4. And then the other thing is they have no way of judging. They're not good at judging their pace, so they don't really know how long a mile is. So eventually I just decided to stop using miles altogether. And it was kind of a difficult transition because I still think in miles. When I run myself, I think about how many miles am I going to go run today, or how many miles did I run this week. And let's say I'm at 29 or 39, like I want to go run an extra mile just so I can say that I did 30 or 40. But so I made the transition to minutes, and that just seemed a whole lot easier because I could tell, if I tell my team to go run 45 minutes, that's a dramatically longer distance for a senior boy than it is for a freshman girl. But it all works out. If a senior boy in that 45 minutes is able to accomplish 6 or 7 miles, that's great. And then if it's a freshman girl, it's only doing 4 miles. But that's what's appropriate for their age and their ability and their body. So it works out really well. I don't have to tell them to run different distances. I can just tell them everybody on the team to run the same amount of time in a practice, and they get a workout in appropriate to their ability. But then beyond that it was trying to figure out what's an appropriate volume. For weekly volume. It's going to be different for different. And I started doing it, I guess, with the summer workouts because as a high school coach, I don't see my kids much over the summer. At a school where a lot of the kids on my team are boarding students, so they go back home for the summer. And even the kids who live in the same town as the school don't necessarily hang around. I got a lot of kids that do a lot of traveling and working all summer, so I don't have a whole lot of access to my kids. So I try to write very detailed summer workouts that will get them through the first 8 weeks, and that's what I do. I write workouts for 8 weeks, and then the 9th week is the cross country camp we attend as a team, and then from then on out we're together. We're together for the rest of the season. So trying to get them start out and a gradual increase, like what's due from week 1 to week 8, and work them up to a higher volume than they start at. Because even also, I'm also coaching a team where maybe half my team run track, but the other half do not. So the other half, and they're active, they're soccer players or lacrosse players. So the first week in June, which is their first week of training, they might not have really run since last cross country season. So I've got to start them out at a fairly conservative amount. So that they, number one, aren't scared off by the first week total, and number two, just so they don't get hurt. Really what I eventually developed after a couple years was what is the default volume per week for the different age groups. And I started out, and I guess the first number I developed was 270. And 270 is really the minimum number of minutes we do in a week during the season. So that's kind of our default training. And that's divided over 6 runs or 6 days.
For what age?
That's kind of all ages, but that is the maximum for a freshman. So a freshman, I don't let go over 270. Freshman boy or freshman girl, and also, at this point, I don't care how good they are, I don't let them go over 270. I feel like that's much more important for girls with the risk of injury in girls and just the way they develop. For boys, I would be open to a boy running more than 270 if they are coming from a middle school background in which they had competed a lot and trained a lot, but I haven't had one yet. I haven't had a middle school boy yet who probably ever run at more than 200 minutes in a week. So, I max freshman out at 270, And then everybody else, it's an increase on that, but it really depends on how long they've been running. So then my sophomore number is 335. So ideally, if I had a freshman who did train at 270 minutes a week all season, then their sophomore number is going to be 335. And then also their sophomore year, they're going to start some morning runs. And I have, so the 335 minute amount, that's based on 8 runs. So 6 regular runs and then 2 either morning runs or night runs, depending on when they're doing their longer one. And then going up to 400 for juniors. And that's adding another additional morning run. So they're doing 9 runs in a week at 400 minutes. And then seniors, there's a lot more variation because it really depends on how many seniors do I have who have been training under me the whole time. And at this point in my career, it's not that many. But I do have, for example, I do have one freshman boy right now who I've coached for 7 straight years. I started coaching him as a 6th grader, so I'm very conscious of what he has done every year, and I know what he can handle. And so he's working his way up to 490 minutes. And that's what he'll be doing most of the season, the middle of the season this year. So it's kind of a gradual increase. And then also he'll be doing 10 runs a week. So 10 runs a week, and that's 490 minutes. But like I said before, I'll often have athletes who didn't start running until their sophomore or junior year. So it's all just kind of flexible based on what they had done previously. But I've really found, I guess, from the 270 to 335 to 400 to 490, if they have done it consistently, then that's an increase that they can handle without risking injury, and it will lead to quite a bit of improvement.
And what about middle school numbers? Like,
Okay.
What would you suggest there?
Yeah, when I coached middle school for 3 years, I was working at the time. I was still mentally in miles. Everything was still happening in my head in miles, and I don't even remember what type of mileage I was trying to accomplish with the middle school team. But now, when I convert it back to minutes, and thinking about the middle school program that we have at our school that's very good, I would say a 6th grader probably start out around 140 minutes. And that's going to be either 4 or 5 runs. I would say, right now I advise 6th graders to do a maximum of 5 runs per week. Probably a long run of 40 to 45 minutes. So that's their long run. And then probably, 7th, 8th grader work up to maybe around 200 minutes. So I would say probably the most I would want to have an 8th grader do at this point would be 200. I know there's some that could handle more, but 8th graders, at least at the school I'm at, are involved in a lot of different activities and a lot of other sports. So there's very few 8th graders who are going to be running exclusively. If there were to be an 8th grader who was pretty physically mature, who had been competing for a few years, then they could handle more than that. But I think, starting out, like I said, around 140 minutes as a 6th grader and working up to probably around 200 as an 8th grader, that would be good. And then increasing our freshman long run distance is 60 minutes. And I would say, as an 8th grader, if you can get that up to around 50, that'll be good. So like a 6th grader doing 40-minute long runs, 7th grader 45, 8th grader 50 minutes. And then, continuing on through high school, I do 10 minutes a year. So freshmen, their long runs are 60, sophomores 70, juniors 80, and seniors 90. So.
We had talked about specialization in
Mhm.
sports and how sometimes detrimental that is to the athlete's development, even in the sport they're specializing in. How do those minutes play in to the overall athletic experience? So, do you count those minutes that they're doing basketball, or are we just talking about running, or?
Right. Let's go with, let's say I've got a junior or a high school athlete, maybe a junior or senior who's been on my team for a good 3 years, and so I think they can probably handle 400 minutes a week. That would be running only. That would be probably if they're not involved in any other activity at a high level. But I do have quite a few kids on my team who are doing, they play soccer. So they're doing club soccer practices maybe 2 or 3 times a week. So I said before, I would have a junior do probably 3 morning runs. So 9 runs total. Well, if they were playing soccer 2 or 3 times a week, I would have them eliminate the morning runs. And so that would probably eliminate 90 to 100 minutes. And so they'd be doing 100 minutes less. So, if I've got someone that's doing 400 minutes a week, that's going to be running exclusive, but if they are involved in something else, then I would definitely cut that down to probably 300 based on what they were doing. So that definitely comes into play. I mean, I've got a senior boy right now who he's a basketball player as well, and he's playing a lot of basketball. I mean, he's playing in tournaments every weekend. I mean, 2 or 3 games a day, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and because of that, I mean, he's fully capable of doing 450 minutes plus. But because of where he's at with the amount of basketball he's playing, he's doing more in the 300 to 350 range.
And what are some of the advantages that you've seen other than being able to administer a practice to a big group and have them start and finish at the same time with minutes versus miles?
I think it's easier for kids to kind of set goals as far as what they're doing. Like we have a reward system. I mean, we go on a travel trip every fall with the team. We just one night overnight in a hotel. We'll travel. I mean, we're in Georgia, so we've traveled to Nashville or Birmingham or Pensacola, and we do that. And in order to go in that, you have to accomplish a certain number of minutes over the summer. So I think that's one thing. It's really easy for them to keep track of the number of minutes they've run over the summer, and they know that, hey, this is my target. Like my target might be 2,000 minutes over an 8-week period. And so they know that's what it is, and it's easy for them to work their way up to it. And it's a good goal for them to have a good way of keeping track. I think the other thing is kids just have, for the longest time, kids were so obsessed with how far they were running. Now it's a whole lot easier to emphasize, I guess. We've had conversations a lot this week about the importance of easy runs. Well, if a kid's super obsessed with their mileage, if they're trying to run a certain number of miles per week, they're going to be trying to get more miles in every day. So let's say they only have 40 minutes to run, they might be running a lot faster in that 40 minutes than they should be. I mean, maybe they're covering 5 miles in that 40 minutes when really they should only be covering 4 miles. I mean, that would be a more appropriate pace for them, I mean, for their easy run. So I think it makes it easier to put emphasis on easy runs, because I don't care how long you're running every week. I mean, as far as the distance, I care for the amount of time you're running per week. And then the other thing, it just gets them thinking about where they're running. Like, I mean, if you know, I mean, let's say you go out and run 4 miles on flat roads, and it takes you 35 minutes. Well, I would rather you run 3 miles on an extremely difficult hilly trail course, and it might also take you 35 minutes. So you've run 1 less mile, but you've gotten much better run in because you've run hills, you've run on, I mean, different terrain that simulates cross country more often, and also you're running on softer surfaces that are, I mean, better for your body, so you're not running on asphalt or concrete the whole time. So I think that's another thing as well, is, I mean, you're able to, you can put more emphasis on, I mean, why are you running the distance that you are? Are you doing it so you can brag about how far you ran that day, or are you really doing it with a, I don't know, more conscious thought on where it's going to get you in your training?